Prime Minister Wang, you've been to China a couple times before.
Many times.
Many times. But you are going to embark your very first official trip to China as the Prime Minister of Singapore next week. So what different expectations do you have for this trip, and what will be the key priorities guiding your agenda?
Well, I made it a point to visit China almost every year since entering politics, because it's useful to visit regularly, to interact, exchange notes with my counterparts, and to get a sense of how China is moving and transforming. I've always had good visits. I've always had good exchanges and meetings with my counterparts. As you say, this time will be a different occasion. It's more special this time because it's my first visit in my capacity as Prime Minister. I would look forward to achieving several objectives. First, to just establish closer ties with Chinese leaders, especially with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang. Second, to reaffirm our shared commitment to enhancing our bilateral cooperation, especially as we mark the 35th anniversary of diplomatic ties this year.
That's right.
And then, of course, thirdly, to discuss the wider regional and global developments that we are all confronting during this challenging period, and to see how we can continue working together to strengthen multilateralism and the rules-based global order.
You met with Chinese President Xi Jinping last November on the sidelines of APEC Economic Leaders meeting. So what's your impression and also some major takeaways from your meeting with President Xi? And as you just mentioned, you will be scheduled to meet President Xi again. What are some of the major topics that you hope to touch upon during this meeting?
We had a short but productive meeting at the sidelines of APEC last year. My first time, in fact, as Prime Minister at that time. We discussed our bilateral cooperation. We discussed cooperation in regional platforms like APEC and how we can take this forward. And I said to the President Xi at that time that I would be visiting China next year. That was in 2024. I said next year in 2025 when we mark the 35th anniversary of diplomatic ties. So I'm doing so right after the elections at the soonest possible opportunity to visit China now, and I hope to be able to meet him again.
And just now you mentioned that your visit this time coincides with the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two nations. So how do you interpret this bilateral tie, which was upgraded in 2023, now termed as an all-round, high-quality, future-oriented partnership? And what is your vision towards the future trajectory of it?
China and Singapore have very close and steadfast partnership. It's a partnership that's built on mutual trust, respect, and understanding. It started with our founding Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and Mr. Deng Xiaoping, and successive Prime Ministers of Singapore since then have built on that strong foundation to establish close rapport and trust with their Chinese counterparts. So I hope to do the same in my visit with Chinese leaders, especially with President Xi and Premier Li. And I think the close ties at the leadership level sets the tone for the overall relationship. We have an apex body called the JCBC, the Joint Council for Bilateral Cooperation, that oversees the many multifaceted and comprehensive projects we have with one another. I used to be the Singapore co-chair of the JCBC. In fact, the JCBC meets every year.
Right, annual.
Each time they meet, the agenda keeps growing because there are so many things to discuss. But it's not just the number of projects, because in the spirit of our partnership, we are pursuing projects that are all-round or comprehensive, that are high in quality, and are also future-oriented. And so these are the guideposts that will shape our cooperation in the future. And with the close partnership we have, I am optimistic that the future of our cooperation is bright, and there are many more things we can do together.
As you just raised that you've been to China many times, to cities, I think, including Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, etc. Chengdu. So what are some of the major changes and transformations you have witnessed through all those years in terms of China's development and modernization that you think are inspirational to you in governing a nation?
The transformation and success of China, I feel, is nothing short of an economic miracle. because in the last 20 or so years when I've been visiting China regularly, even as a civil servant and then later as a politician, across so many different Chinese cities, not just your Beijing and Shanghai, but even in a city like Chengdu.
Right.
And other cities, you can see transformation happening. You can see the determination and the drive of the Chinese people to move forward. And you can see lives getting better and improving. So it's a remarkable change, and I continue to wish China every success in its ongoing transformation and modernization efforts.
And you recently made a remark that never bet on the decline of China. So what are the key factors that underpin your confidence, and has China's recent economic performance, especially amid the global headwinds, reinforced your belief in its long-term resilience and also potential?
Well, first of all, it's what I've just described. It's the track record of success. Remarkable success. Of course, you can say past performance does not predict future performance, but still, it's a very impressive track record, which gives one confidence. But a second factor is that I've interacted so many times with Chinese leaders at all levels, the mayors, the party secretaries, the governors, and of course the leaders at the center in Beijing. And I've always been impressed by the high level of competence, by their deep mastery of issues. They understand the challenges. They are focused on resolving the challenges and problems that China faces. But it's more than just competence and mastery. It's also a willingness to listen and to be open-minded about finding better solutions. Because governments never get everything right. It's impossible. Governments will make mistakes from time to time. What distinguishes a high-quality system is the ability to reflect, learn, and keep on improving and doing better. And I see that in the Chinese system. But the biggest reason, the most important reason why I have confidence in China is because of the people of China. It's because of their tremendous ingenuity and resourcefulness, the deep drive to succeed, to strive and work hard. And that gives me confidence that China will continue to have a good future ahead.
Thank you for the good wishes. And you'll be attending the annual meeting of New Champions, yes, which will take place in Tianjin this year, also known as Summer Doubles. So what will be the key messages they hope to deliver there, especially with this global context, with the world now going through choppy waters filled with so many different challenges?
We are in the midst of a profound global change, so my message at Tianjin will be the importance of upholding a rules-based multilateral order. Because without rules, without long-standing norms of cooperation, countries everywhere will be worse off. Small countries like Singapore, of course, are very concerned because we have limited bargaining power and we risk being sidelined and squeezed by the bigger powers. But I think big countries will be impacted too, because if we end up in a world that's more fragmented, where there's deep suspicions and mistrust of one another, this will be a world with great uncertainty and volatility, and you will have slower growth and higher inflation in the global economy, which means all countries will suffer and our people, at the end of the day, will be the ones facing the impact. So we have to do something about this. Of course, multilateralism today is not perfect. There are things that can be improved, but our response should not be to abandon the multilateral system. Our response should be to reform, change, improve, and make the system work better for the benefit of all countries.
Given the challenges they just touched upon, the tensions in trade, anti-globalization trend, various geopolitical risks, and so many different pressing issues faced with the world, what is your top concern for Singapore from your perspective?
Well, we know that from Singapore's perspective, we are small, we are an open economy, we rely heavily on trade. So this new external environment will make it less hospitable for us to continue flourishing. So we have to find ways to navigate the external environment carefully. But I think despite the changes that we see around us, trade will still continue. Countries do want to be more self-sufficient in this new environment, but it's not possible for any single country to do everything themselves.
But talking about trade, you recently described the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration as a seismic change in the global order, suggesting the era of free trade is over. Given what you have just mentioned, Singapore's heavy reliance on global trade. So what are the specific plans, what are the priorities for your government to navigate through the swifts and also the pressure in the global trading system?
As I mentioned just now, the era of free trade, or the era that we are familiar with, may be over, but trade will still continue. Different configurations, different supply chains, we will try to be competitive, we will try to stay relevant. But at the same time, we will work with like-minded countries to uphold free trade and to uphold a rules-based trading system. We are doing this with our neighbors in ASEAN. So within ASEAN, we are accelerating our integration, bringing down trade and non-trade barriers so that we can make ASEAN a more integrated community, more competitive, more attractive for investors. We are doing this with partners in Asia, like China, India, Japan, South Korea, for example, working closely with all the key players in Asia. But we are also pursuing this with countries outside of Asia, like the EU, Latin America, Africa, for example. And some of these are countries we are not so familiar with, but we think we should now make an extra effort to establish closer links with them. We are also strengthening our cooperation in regional platforms like RCEP and CPTPP. And we are finding ways to establish new linkages across different platforms. For example, between ASEAN and other groupings. So these are all different areas we are exploring. I believe in every crisis there will always be opportunities. And so we are finding ways to seize new opportunities for ourselves and for other countries.
Just like the Chinese phrase,
yes,
危機, so the opportunities always come with...
We may speak English, but we are very Asian in our thinking.
Speaking of regional and global cooperation, China and ASEAN about a month ago have announced the conclusion of negotiations on version 3.0 FTA, and with the aim to be signed by year end. So how do you interpret the significance of this upgraded protocol, especially in this global context of rising protectionism and uncertainties?
It's a very important upgrade, and Singapore fully supports it. It's in line with the spirit of what I said just now, that amidst the pressures of protectionism and trade barriers, Singapore will want to work closely with ASEAN and other like-minded countries to continue to uphold free trade and a rules-based trading system. So in that spirit, we fully support the upgrade to the China-ASEAN FTA. We hope this can be signed at the coming ASEAN-China Summit in October, and that the new upgrade will come into force soon after.